All team, give it everything you got.
It's time to fangirl flail with Fangirls Going Rogue.
Count me in. Never get between a Mandalorian and a weapons package.
This is the way.
News, discussion, and commentary from the female point of view.
You call this a diplomatic solution?
No, I call it aggressive negotiations.
She's as important as he is.
With your hosts, Tricia Barr and Sarah Woloski.
Boy, am I glad to hear your voice.
Strap in, because this is where the fun begins.
I like the sound of that.
Welcome, Yub Cubs, to Fangirls Going Rogue. I'm Tricia Barr, feeling the springtime mood of March 2025. And with me, as always, is Sarah Woloski from Skywalking Through Neverland. Hey, Sarah.
Hey, it's my birthday month, March. Yay!
Are you one of those that celebrates like the whole month?
You know what? I celebrate until I feel like it has been celebrated. And I actually was done celebrating March 9th, which was when we had my birthday party, and it was like a witchy themed, like the Witch's Road, and we built a Witch's Road, and it was really fun. And I wish you could have come.
Me too. I would have liked to have been there. So happy birthday.
Yay, thank you.
1 year older and 1 year wiser.
That's right. I feel it.
You're closing in on Crone, where I'm already at.
That's right. I can't wait.
We are less than 30 days today to Celebration Japan. For those that are interested, want to know what's happening. And I'm just going to tell you what my favorite panel is. They actually have put out the panels, which to me seems amazing, right? Mm-hmm. Already?
Yeah. You know what? Usually it's like 2 weeks in advance or something. So
yeah.
That's great. So
best panel ever is Vanessa Marshall is going to interview my boyfriend, Oscar Isaac, at 2:45 Saturday on the Galaxy stage. There will be nothing stopping me from being there.
Are you going to be like front row?
I'm going to try.
I bet. I can't wait. That's amazing. And that is your space boyfriend with Space Mom.
Exactly. And speaking of Vanessa Marshall, I do want to shout out, she and Tia and Taylor Gray are doing a rewatch of Star Wars Rebels, and they have a new podcast called Pod of Rebellion, which I've been thoroughly enjoying. Have you listened to that?
I have seen all the social media commentary. I have not listened to it yet, so I will have to dive into Star Wars Rebels again and listen. I can't wait to hear them.
I know. I like listening to just all the, behind the scenes fun stuff. There's actually things that, having followed it pretty closely, I haven't heard. So I'm enjoying it.
That's great. It's kind of like, that reminds me of Office Ladies, which is, of course, the two ladies in the office who then go through each episode. And it's fabulous. So I can't wait. I'll put that on my list.
Particularly because you can do it on your own time.
Yeah.
It's always timely rewatch. It's not like you have to rush to keep up or anything else.
And it's a good excuse to rewatch. I think that's the fun part.
Well, is there anything else going on that might be distracting you from listening to podcasts?
Yes. So Disneyland is again, for the second consecutive year, doing Season of the Force. And this is like the whole time where they basically take, what is it, Disneyland, Galaxy's Edge, and Tomorrowland, and celebrate Star Wars with food and merch and just extra stuff going on. And that starts this Friday as we record, March 28th, and it's going through May 11th. Plus, there's going to be Disneyland After Dark Star Wars nights, and I'm very excited about it. And Tricia, I think you and I are both going to the opening day media preview, basically.
Yeah, we'll be giving our insights again, like, what we really liked and what we didn't. Last time we liked most of it, except for the scavenger hunt.
Mm-hmm. We'll see if they have the scavenger hunt again. And there's going to be food. There's going to be a Death Star popcorn bucket. It looks amazing.
There's also going to be a Tauntaun bucket, but apparently that's not coming out right away.
No, and neither is the Jawa bucket. And both of those I want. Or Jawa sipper. Yeah. I know.
I feel like there's going to be a locker in my future at Disneyland. That's what we had to do last time because what was it? The Jabba the Hutt pop. Yeah, and it didn't fit very well anywhere. It wasn't comfortable to carry. So yeah, locker it went into for the rest of the day. But yes, awesome. Stay tuned. Social media to back to the podcast, to the website fangirlsgoingrogue.com. We'll have insights and tell you what's the best tips and tricks for the event.
Absolutely. Okay, so there's lots of upcoming movies stuff in the news, including Andor. How excited are we for Andor season 2?
I like that you called it a movie because apparently we are getting them like movies, 3 episodes at a time. So we're going to have essentially a movie every week until we finish. And it'll jump a year in every 3 episodes up to Rogue One. So
yes,
that's a lot.
It was really funny. It was in that discussion about season 1 on Star Wars YouTube that was live that Tony Gilroy was like, and I really feel for all the podcasters out there who have to cover 3 episodes in a week.
Or how about the guys that do the YouTube breakdowns, like when they're like looking for all the stuff? There's no way you can. I mean, that's a lot. That's a lot. So we're just going to do our best.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I kind of wish they'd spread it out because it's more Star Wars love spread out. So I like that aspect of it.
Like maybe 1 a month.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, that would be better. Mm-hmm.
Did you see the season 2 second trailer that just came out this week?
I did. I saw it once, but you have some notes here, so it seems like you've been able to dive in. So why don't you share your thoughts on it?
Well, first of all, we got more shots of the Mon Mothma's daughter's wedding.
There's like 4 people going around a ring or something, right?
That's Mon, her husband, Perrin.
Yes,
yeah.
Perrin. Mm-hmm.
And then the parents of the boy that she's marrying. That's what I can
totally
tell
a
from
wedding.
that shot. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It kind of creeps me out. This
Mon is not
wedding
happy.
Of children.
Yeah, no kidding. That's what they did back in the day, I guess. Yeah. And then Dedra looked to be in peril. Do we know what's happening there?
Well, one of 2 things. She's run afoul of Darth Vader, and he's choking her, or she's in an airlock, and the life is being sucked out of our girl.
Uh-oh. I hope she doesn't die. I really like her.
That would be the end of our twin flames.
No, that would be. And you know he'd do everything in his power, Cyril, to help her.
It's so funny looking back on that interview because they were so playing it up and literally like the sexual tensions just in like the last 2 seconds of season 1 when he saves her.
It really is. They must have just shot that last and it took it with them. So funny.
And what seems to be kind of the buzz in the Star Wars community is that we're going to finally see the Gorham Massacre play out, which is the event that led to Mon Mothma declaring the rebellion, to speaking up in the Senate. And there's a lot of different hints across legends and different material of what happens. And it looks like they're going to kind of like grab it all and really give it a definitive way it happens. We see the kind of fallout in Star Wars Rebels of her Mon Mothma escaping on that show, but we didn't see what she actually said and what the events were leading up to it. But it's actually going to cover, Tony Gilroy said in the Star Wars interview that it's going to cover 5 different episodes. So it'll take over a year to see what plays out on Gorham.
Wow. Okay, well that's cool. And of course, that's part of the journey, is getting Mon Mothma to be basically the leader of the rebellion as we know her. So that will be fun. And what's going to happen to Luthen? That's my big question.
He has to die.
I guess so. Yeah, because we don't see him, and he's kind of the head right now.
I feel like he's going to go out with a bang, whatever it is.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and you know, one of the things we do know is by the time Rogue One is that Cassian is Mon Mothma's trusted go-to guy, right? But they haven't really interacted at this point. So I feel like that's going to be kind of the big thing of season 2 is how he earns that trust from her.
Very much so. Yeah. Can't wait. And you're going to probably see a couple episodes at Celebration.
I hope so. Maybe 3.
Yeah.
I feel like they'd have to show
They
us
need
3
to do
if they
3.
did.
Yeah, they really do. If they're
Yeah.
little movies.
Yeah. And have you been following any of the interviews? Because Tony Gilroy's done a bunch of interviews for Andor in the last, I don't know, he must have had some free time.
I have not. All I remember is that he mentioned that they've been done since at least November. So they've been just really excited to share. And finally things are coming out.
I know. Can you imagine like having been done with something and you're like, I'd like to talk about it before I forget it. And it's not because he's going to forget it. It's because your brain has to let go of those things to create something new, which he is working on another project that's not Star Wars. He has some ideas that he brought up. So he got asked in Collider on this feeling very relevant to present day.
Like Andor?
And this is
feeling
yes,
very...
the show itself.
Got it.
And his response was, no one was working on the show with the newspaper at any point in time. We write so far in advance. I've said this before. I've been a student of history as an amateur, a dinner table historian all this time, and it's nothing but revolutions and uprisings and people being swept up into events that they weren't ready for and people assuming heroic roles that they had never anticipated.
Wow.
And I've actually listened to him talk about other movies he's written on podcasts, particularly historical events, and he really does dig into the history of the stories that he's writing, and he writes a lot of stuff that's like kind of like historical fiction or related to real events. And I love how they sort of approach Andor in the same type of way, that it's essentially a Star Wars historical fiction, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he's done his research. I mean, Star Wars has by now a ton of, valuable intel and history that he can dig into, especially because this pertains to that original film, A New Hope.
Yeah, leading right into it. And you and I have talked a lot about the costuming, and he gives the costume designer Michael Wilkinson a big shout out in the interview. He calls him just a god. I really don't try to think about awards or any of that stuff much at all, but I'm really going to be severely disappointed if Michael Wilkinson does not get recognized for this show.
Wow. And that's something that we talked about. We spoke with Michael Wilkinson and Luke Hall, who is the production designer, and both of them really reiterated how both of their fields are basically in service to the story. So everything that they create is in service to the story, which is why Andor just fires on all cylinders. So I can't wait to see what he's done for season 2 now.
I know, particularly we have that whole wedding scene now that we're just anticipating.
And all those colors in the wedding are like we've talked about, a historical painting.
Yes. It's very much that kind of like earthy hue of an orange, and even the blue kind of feels like an ocean. And that they've grounded in. Then you saw, Mon Mothma's known for her white too. So I think they're going to transition her to sort of that look that we're familiar with from A New Hope eventually.
Right, because she's been in creams, and I think we see her in gold in one of the trailers. But eventually she'll have to go to that white. Definitely.
Yeah. And just this, the set design. Remember talking about season 1 about her looking like she was in a prison in her own home, the way they designed it. And then obviously they have the real prison of Narkina.
That's right.
Where they were building the Death Star parts. So, but they even made the set, her set where she lived, feel like she was locked in a cage. And the first trailer, we see her dancing, and that's from the wedding scene. And then it goes on, we see more shots of the wedding scene. So I feel like that's going to be a really important moment. Whatever is happening there, it's going to be important.
Well, it's basically her giving up her daughter and almost her relationship with her daughter to further the cause of the rebellion. She's burning her life just as Luthen did for a sunrise she may never see.
How much do you think you have to think that the galaxy's on fire to be like, well, I'm going to just have to let my kid go? There's nothing I can do to change her mind or sway her mind. And part of the not being able to try to sway her is simply because she has to stay very secretive about her intentions and what she's doing. So she lives this kind of whole cloaked life,
right?
Even with the closest people, and just has to keep moving forward with the things she's going to do.
Right. Well, I feel like, isn't it in Star Wars Rebels where she makes that speech that she, like, the Star Wars Rebels help her flee her life as a senator.
Yeah.
And so it's at that point, I feel like at that point, she probably feels like this huge weight has been lifted off her because she no longer has to live a lie. She can just be part of the rebellion. And as long as the rebellion is hidden from the Empire, then, she can be who she's always wanted to be.
Right. And there, it's interesting because George Lucas was trying to be really like black and white with the original trilogy. And so he puts her in white to be the opposition to the darkness of the Emperor and Darth Vader. But also there's like this idea of purity of who she is at that point. When you get into the white outfit, she truly is finally now who she wants to be.
That makes sense. I love that.
Maybe that's a good segue into our next discussion.
I think it is, because we're going to talk about Disney's Snow White, the 2025 film. And this is one of Disney's live action reimaginings, but it's very intense because the original 1937 Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs film was the very first animated full-length feature film. Everyone thought it wouldn't work, and then it ended up being a fantastic, amazing hit and basically built Walt Disney Animation as we know it now. As we know it today, they built their studios in Burbank, and it's this seminal film. So first of all, before we dive into Snow White 2025, what is your relationship with the original Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs? Did you first see it? What's anything you remember?
Honestly, I don't think I saw it in the theater.
Okay.
I think I saw it on video. Like it was like a beta. It wouldn't even have been VHS. Like
a Betamax.
Really dating. Yeah, Betamax. And I know we had the record. I had all the Disney animated movie records. I think Snow White was the one I was listening to when one of the earthquakes hit when I lived in California, because I remember there was a big scratch on it, and I think that was from it actually happening. For people who are like, why are you talking about Snow White? Hang on with us, because we will tie it into things that we talk about all the time on this podcast, even, storytelling, Wicked, all that kind of stuff. So
women in the film, all that kind of
yes, exactly.
Absolutely.
What was your relationship to the 1937 original?
Okay, so at some point in the 80s, Disney must have re-released this in the theaters, and I happened to be visiting Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where all my relatives live, and I remember my Aunt Anne took me at one point to go see it in the theater, and me being 5, I thought, okay, this is a new release. What else would you think? So I thought this was a movie just coming out right then. I had no relationship or concept that it had come out, 50 years before that. So, so I saw it, and I remember really liking the animals specifically, because I just have always loved animals and drawing animals. That's what I liked about Bambi as well. And I do also remember that particular viewing was when my Aunt Anne turned me on to movie theater popcorn with butter.
And extra salt. You had to put extra salt on it.
don't know. It was like my parents, my mom has always been very healthy and always hated the smell of theater popcorn, so we never bought it. But when my aunt took me, we got the big tub and then we got a refill, and I'm like, oh, this is good. So that is what I remember about my first Snow White viewing.
I want to say my biggest impression of Snow White is actually the mine car ride at Magic Kingdom.
Well, there you go. That also counts. I know a lot of people actually, and like Richard himself knows the rides more than he does the actual film. So,
yeah.
So
that's what I was thinking too. You know, in the scene in the live action version, you know, relating to that ride very much.
The hi-ho song, right? They
put it in there.
Mine. Yeah, they did. They had all the mine cars going on the whizzing woo. It was so fun. All right, so then let's jump to now Snow White 2025 and our overall impression of this new version. And then we'll get into all the details. So Tricia, what's your overall impression?
For some reason, this strange marketing campaign for this movie, they didn't really go hard into that this was a musical. So I guess when I got in there, I was like, wow, this really is like a musical. I should have known with Rachel Zegler starring in it, right? So, she did West Side Story. And then she did the Hunger Games song of Ballad of Birds and Snakes or whatever.
That one.
I'm sorry, Hunger Games, for squashing that up, but yes, which she was excellent in. And so
she's also West Side Story, which she was Maria, and I was blown away.
Yeah. And it's a different way to tell a story, to move the story along. The musical kind of conceits allow you to get into the heads of the characters. And so I just loved it. And I love the want song in this movie, Waiting on a Wish. I thought that it was just a perfect way to kind of encapsulate where she was kind of trapped in this person that she was and didn't know where to go
or how to get herself out of it. She knew what she had been and she knew what her parents had taught her to be, but she didn't know how to grab that for herself. Yeah. And that's all in that song, Waiting on a Wish. Yeah, like you, I was floored with the fact that this was a musical. It begins with that musical number, just like Beauty and the Beast did, just like Into the Woods did, and it hit me hard. And I must really like 6/8 time, because that's what the song is, where the good things grow, and it's all this 6/8 time. It's that very waltzy, dancey kind of feel, and I was just immediately hooked, and I loved that. And I also, even though I've seen Snow White a number of times, because we also had it on VHS beyond that movie theater screening. And so there is just very particular moments in that film that are seminal film animation moments, like the 7 dwarf silhouettes on the rock, or Dopey with the jewels in his eyes, or that Snow White dancing step with the dwarves. I think she's like trading places, doing a kind of a do-si-do with Dopey. And which is also, they use that same animation in Robin Hood with Maid Marian when she's dancing with some of her folk. And so there was so many homages to this film, to that original animation, that it was almost like you could take a snapshot of this live action and be like, oh, there it is. That's what they're referencing in the original. So I really felt like that was done with love and care. And, of course, the music homages as well. They had your... I didn't write notes about this. You know what? We'll get into the music a little later, but because these are our overall impression. So I did like the music homages as well. So, yeah. So let's get into some of these storytelling beats. And I just got to say that I think this film stands alone. Like, even if it wasn't even based on the original Snow White, I feel like they did a good job with the script in like putting forth characters and like character journeys and having it all come around in a neat circle. And I feel like Dopey is one of those characters they've really developed in this film. That was great. Do you want to talk a little bit about Dopey's character growth?
I do want to talk about Dopey's growth. First of all, I didn't realize he was narrating at the beginning.
Yes.
And they closed that circle at the end.
Yeah.
It's a interesting way to tell something about the dwarves and who they are, in that they don't understand him. They just make fun of him. And she instantly comes into this dynamic and picks up that he's afraid and fearful, and they're just like, he's dopey. Like, they're calling him dopey, like he's stupid because he can't speak. And not being able to speak doesn't mean that you don't know what's happening in the world, that you can't understand. It's just that you haven't figured out a way to express yourself or to find your voice, whatever that way may be. And I feel like it was a really good way to sort of, just without beating anybody over the head, just looking at like the way that a group of 7 men relate to each other. And as soon as you put a woman into that dynamic, and they have empathy, she has empathy, and the dwarves all learn to have empathy, but it takes them having someone in their situation to show them a different way. They've been doing this for 200 and some odd years. Whatever it was, 275 years or whatever, that Dopey's been living this life of not being understood. So, I thought it was an interesting way just to kind of present this point.
I agree, and I love the fact that she gives him stepping stones. So like sometimes, to express myself, I whistle. So it's not quite speaking. He didn't have to like form words, but he could do the stepping stone of actually whistling, which I did read that was the composer of the soundtrack, or the original score, who was whistling. That was actually his whistle.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So like, I feel like that was a great stepping stone. And then to have it come full circle with him being the narrator, that was great. Did you think that his voice was the voice of Olaf, Josh Gad?
Yes.
Us too. All 4 of us watching in the theater were like, that's Josh Gad in his high Olaf-y voice.
I was sure it was him, and then
too.
so I stayed and watched the credits. I'm like, oh, okay, wow, he really sounds like him.
He does.
I was like, are they creating some type of like multiverse with Olaf narrating every story?
Right. No, and it wasn't him. So, oh well, we were all fooled.
I'm glad I wasn't the only one, because I was certain of it until the end, and then I was like, okay.
Yeah. You're not the only one. All right, and then another thing I loved was, they really gave Snow White much more agency in this film. They even cut "Someday My Prince Will Come" song, which is, I think, the original Snow White's "I Want" song, right? She's like, oh, someday I want a prince to save me. Yay. And he does. So instead, you get this opening number, which was Where the Good Things Grow, and that's basically Snow White's parents teaching her the 4 values that she will continue to kind of use to grow her character in the film. And she's given these 4 values from her father, which is fearless, fair, brave, and true, and all of them are on a necklace, a locket, that I believe they both gave her.
Yes.
Yeah.
I did you, when you were watching this, think about how close this movie, well, Snow White, not this movie, but the original Snow White, is to Sleeping Beauty, whereas you fall asleep and a prince comes and saves you. I mean, they're 20 some years apart.
Right. I think I did back in the day. I haven't recently, but Grimm's Fairy Tales, have you ever read Grimm's Fairy Tales? The books? Okay. Yeah, my mom would read them to me, and partly because my mom's maiden name is Grimm, by the way, and we come from Austria and southern Germany, so I may be a descendant of the Grimms.
I'm sure you are related somehow.
Somehow. So yes, we had the original Grimm's Fairy Tales, and wow, they are dark. They are cutthroat. Like, they spare no detail in terms of like murdering and things like that. But yes, a lot of the plots are very similar. And so these both come from Grimm's fairy tales. And I just want to bring up a really funny part that I'm watching. So I'm watching the movie, and the evil queen asks the huntsman to kill Snow White and cut out her heart and give it to her in this box. And she presents the box, which I was so happy that they used the original design from the original Snow White film. It's just a different color, but it's like perfectly that original box that you know. And so there's a part in this new movie where the evil queen has had the box for a while. She thinks the huntsman has killed Snow White. And in the original Grimm's fairy tales, the huntsman kills a deer and puts Snow White's heart in the box. And so when the evil queen takes out the box and she opens the box, I was like holding my breath, wondering what we were going to see. Are we going to see like a heart of an animal? No, it's an apple. And at that point, I think I was the only one in the theater. I was just like laughing my ass off because I for one thing, it has been like 6 weeks since this huntsman has given her back the box. Wouldn't she have checked the box right when she got it? No, you don't
Apparently
think so?
didn't.
No, I don't know.
It felt about right.
So this is the only point that really niggled me, kind of like in the new, what is it? The new movie, Captain America movie, where Harrison Ford wouldn't take off those damn headphones. I'm like, why wouldn't she check the box and see that there's an apple and not Snow White's heart? But all right, I have to wave that one away. I thought that was funny.
It's what Tony Gilroy talked about in his live interview on StarWars.com, that sometimes the characters get the idiot ball. He didn't call it exactly that, but sometimes characters do stupid things so the plot can move forward.
Yes.
And you try to never get your character in the idiot ball position, but that's what they did.
Yeah, so that was an idiot ball moment. Mm-hmm. All right, so let's go back to these 4 values that Snow White was given, and let's talk about like when she displays them, because I think that was it was really well done in this film. You have fearless, fair, brave, and true. And there's a moment when Snow White is still under the queen's thumb. She's basically the scullery maid. And she really displayed bravery in speaking out to the queen, because the queen was going to basically give Jonathan, who is the new prince, he's not really a prince, but he's a thief. She was going to give Jonathan basically a sentence of death, right? And so Snow White speaks out to her and says, hey, why would you do that? And so I feel like that was where she just displayed bravery. Was there a point where you thought she displayed any of these moments?
Oh yeah, I mean the bravery keeps kind of blossoming from that point on, where she gets thrust into the forest and sort of has to get through that moment, and then choose to stand up to the Queen's guards when they're arresting the thieves in the forest. And so it keeps kind of growing. The bravery has to grow over the story to the ultimate brave moment,
right?
But yeah, I mean, that's like the first time that you see her really exercise it.
Definitely. And I feel like fearless, like then after she's been brave a couple times, then you can start to feel fearless. I feel like it's weird that fearless is the first value. But like when she returns to the castle at the end, I feel like that's displaying fearlessness in the face of possible death.
Yeah, and I think learning her father's fate, that he truly is gone, sort of, I guess, broke the spell that she was just, in the state of hoping something else would happen. And, that's the point for anybody when you decide to stand up for yourself in any situation. You hope that somebody's going to save you. Mm-hmm. And in this case, it's her father, like this idea. And she's, the guards or the thieves are thieving in his name, so maybe they know something about him. That's how she's holding on to this idea. And then the queen comes with the apple. She's like, he's dead.
Right.
That's where she finally kind of executes the, in her brain. She's like, well, there's nothing left. I'm just gonna have to be fearless and do this myself.
Very good. Yeah, yeah. And then fair can mean fair as in your face, or fair can mean being fair to the people around you. I feel like she displays fairness, that kind of fairness, with the dwarfs. She sees that the dwarfs are not treating Dopey fairly or like the others, and so she decides to fix that. So I think that's kind of a use of fair. But I think you have another discussion on fair.
Well, fair is used a lot in this story. It comes up in the dialogue. It comes up in the song lyrics many, many times. There's an idea of, so the top definition of fair, if you look up in the dictionary, so they put the most used way a word is used at the top of a definition, typically. So number 1 is impartial and just without favoritism or discrimination. That's the first. So it's an adjective. And it's also used to be a beautiful woman. I think that's like the 7th number down use of the word fair. And it's noted in the dictionary as archaic. So it means it's an outdated and antiquated way that the word is used.
Okay.
There's an interesting idea that she keeps asking the mirror who's the fairest of them all.
The evil
and
queen,
she
yes.
is looking for beauty.
Mm-hmm.
And that isn't necessarily how he's answering her, but that's what she sees. There's also this interesting dynamic in our current society that's not like new. It's mostly in the social media age where people look to be fair by being beautiful, by enhancing their beauty. If you look at people who are doing a lot of facial work that are to look a certain way, they are trying to look like they're fair people, but impartial or unbiased, right?
Oh, okay. I can see that.
So they are aggressively pursuing this double standard in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like this is like they're definitely talking about it. But when they talk, she uses the idea of, what is her song? All is fair.
Are you talking about the
Queen
evil
song?
queen?
Yeah, all is fair.
All is fair.
Right?
Yes.
All is fair. She's just talking about anything I do is fair. She's not the song is not talking about her beauty. So she actually understands the idea of fairness and equivalence. She just has decided to throw it out the wind.
Yeah, she's like, all is fair when you wear the crown.
Yeah.
To be the queen means you do as you please.
Exactly. But if you pay attention to the mirror answering the question, he isn't, as Snow White rises in her degree of understanding and empathizing with other people and being fair to the dwarves, she is being elevated above the queen, and it has nothing to do with her beauty.
Right. Yeah, and as the mirror states at the very end, she is fair not only without but from within, and that is what matters most. That's what the mirror says at the very end. And wow, that evil queen is pissed.
Yeah. When do you think she's true, and what do you think that means to her?
So I feel like we're going back to Snow White's I Want song. So in Snow White's Waiting on a Wish song, she talks about how she was born in a snowstorm in the bitterest part of the year, and she was resilient then. Where is that girl now? Like, I don't see that in me now, but maybe if I wish it, I'll be it, waiting on a wish. And so I feel like she is true. True to me means being true to yourself and who you are inside. So that's how she feels she is inside, but she had to develop all of those things. She was born to be a princess and a leader, but growing up, she had to develop those other 3 skills, those other 3 values first, to be fearless, to be brave, and to be fair. And only then can she be her true self.
Yes. I mean, I was, as you're talking, I still hadn't really fully formed my idea of what true was. That's why I wanted you to go first. But thinking about the movie itself, she doesn't really see her, that person that's resilient, slip away, because I don't think she realizes it's happening. Like, you're shocked, your system is shocked when the mother dies.
Yes.
And then a new woman comes in, and I don't think her idea is to just trust her. And then then they talk about, there's something great threat that he has to go fight against. And he leaves to go protect them. And then she's left with this woman, and then he never comes back. So she slowly was sort of like wrangled in this position of realizing that things weren't right, but she didn't have anybody to tell her
right.
how
And meanwhile,
to escape it.
Meanwhile, she kind of lost herself along the way. Right.
Yeah.
That's where we see her. So yeah, all those values had to be there for her to be true to what she was originally supposed to be.
Absolutely. I talk a lot about like the monomyth, the hero's journey, and just one thing I want to point out, because this really isn't a classic monomyth. It's more of what I call a modern fantasy musical, which tends to be more about empowerment.
Oh, okay.
And freeing yourself. And it's just, fairy tales are supposed to tell you how to act in a society. And I feel like the modern musical is more about finding out who you are inside and how to empower yourself.
Mm-hmm.
There's not all musicals are that, but you'll see a lot of them are. There is a straight up refusal of the call in the movie where Jonathan's been stripped of his clothes, and they hung him out on the gate, and she decides to go untie him so he can escape, so he doesn't freeze to death in the snow. Snow White saves him from the snow.
Yes.
And he asks her to come with him, and she refuses that call. So that's like when when Obi-Wan says, "Come with me," and Luke's like, "Nah," and then his aunt and uncle get killed, and he's like, "Okay, I guess I will."
Exactly.
It's very similar for Snow White. It's not like she refuses his initial call because she doesn't really know anything different.
Right.
But then
that's scary.
Same
it's
idea.
Scary to step out of your
the queen sort
world.
of thrust her out into the adventure later on, and then she does accept it. But this is, a very similar idea to Luke's story in A New Hope, which is the hero doesn't necessarily embark on becoming a hero until there really isn't any other choice.
Yeah.
And they're kind of in survival mode. So it's just, sometimes people think, oh, people just become heroes. And that's going back to Tony Gilroy's point about Andor, is you don't realize you're going to be hero until the moment that you do it.
Yeah. And she really was thrust, like, she had no choice but to run through the scary woods, which I loved how they made homages to the original Snow White with the trees, like branches coming out and grabbing her
coming up
and things, and the animals popping out after that. Oh, so cute.
But that place where she has a refusal call is also the place where she has her heroic moment. Her triumph
right.
At the end. It's at the palace gate. So not everything in this movie is perfect. There's some things that, sometimes the costume design and some of the set design seemed a little hokey, but if you're just kind of willing to just look at like what they're trying to do with the story, there's some really cool things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's awesome. And gateway is like a gateway to, it's a choice. So I love that. Wow.
But and she's standing like on a bridge, the bridge between your former self and your new self when she has a moment. So
and so is the queen. The
choices.
Queen is also more standing on the bridge when she gets the knife shot out of her hand by one of the rogues.
The perfect knife.
Yes. Yes. Wow. Okay. Well, wow. I love discussing movies with you because it really helps. Like, I think we enjoy discussing movies more than we do watching them because it's fun to like pull out these details. So I love it.
Yeah. People they talked hard about them when they were making them. So we should enjoy their hard work.
Absolutely. So let's talk about all these story upgrades that they could do from 1937 to 2025. That is nearly, 89 years, 88? I can't do math, but that's like a long time and a lot has happened in society. So I feel like there's been a lot of major story upgrades. And one of the main ones is Prince Charming, who has like 2 scenes in the original Snow White. He comes in, he hops Snow White's fence and like sings a song with her, and then he shows up at the end to kiss her, and that's all. So now we have this charming rogue Jonathan, and he is not a prince, but he is someone who lives in the forest with his band of thieves, because that's all they can really do in this lawless time, right? So what did you think of Jonathan?
Well, I like the change up. It's not somebody that's going to like change her life. Mm-hmm. It's just somebody with a different point of view. Like a prince doesn't have a different point of view than a princess. And so it's a way to change. To me, it was very Robin Hood.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely.
That's
his band of
I feel like what they're trying
thieves.
to evoke.
Yeah. Definitely. And it also gave me some Flynn Rider vibes a little bit, right? The thief in the forest.
Well, and straight up, there were a few shots that were Princess Bride's Wesley.
Oh.
Like the hair, the way they framed it.
He's got the coloring. I can see that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I feel like they had really cute chemistry too.
They did. They had great chemistry, but there were times when I was like, wow, he looks like Carrie Yules. Like he could play Carrie Yules in like a Princess Bride remake. He could be Wesley.
He'd be good. Yeah, I like that. I love that. Okay. Yeah, and I thought that was a good story, and you're right. He could teach her some things, like the Princess Problems song. That was all about, him teaching her stuff, but she would like teach him right back, all the princess problems. That was cute. And yeah, I liked that. And then okay, so the dwarfs. The dwarfs are magical creatures, and really the only nod to that was in the mines. Their hands glowed. They would touch the rock, and then the rock would show them where the gems were because they would glow. So I don't know, what'd you think about this?
I feel like this is one of those elements when you go into recreating something that's old, that you have to deal with the problematic things, which they were dealing with a lot of problematic things from Snow White. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people said, why not use real dwarves?
Right.
But I don't think the intention is for them to be like human dwarf as we think of. And that's why they did the magical moment, so that they could say they're more like a fairy. And that's why we CGI them, like in Maleficent, we have the fairies and that are with Aurora, and they're human actor, playing these magical creatures. And that's sort of what they decided to do there. And I think that's because they're still trying to evoke sort of that magical bit of Snow White, which is just the way the dwarfs move and what you can do with them. And using a real dwarf wasn't going to be able to get to that point of what they wanted with the story. Is that the right choice? I don't know. I don't know. I could argue either way, and people are going to have opinions on that, but to me, they worked fine in this movie.
Okay. I know going into it, I had seen footage of them at D23, and I was like, oh, they look so weird, and I didn't like it. I felt like in terms of the world they created with this film, like the design of the characters, from the animals to the dwarfs to like even the design of their cottage and stuff, it did all work together.
Yes.
And so in that way, I thought it worked. Also, the dwarves more towards the second half of the film weren't as big, like they weren't in the story as much, and so they didn't distract. But I feel like it would have been better to use actual little people, because I don't know, I felt like I would have more of a connection to them. But so you're right, it could go either way, really could.
Yeah, and like if you look at like just the deer has this that
rounded,
that's where it's kind of like it all matched within the visual style that they were choosing to do,
right,
with the animals and that. And it's just, that's one of the decisions you have to make. I mean, it worked for I think what they were trying to do is they're still trying to straddle a line of it being this fairy tale and, having the dwarves dance and do the things they're doing. Yes, at first, when you first look at them, it's a little bit like their faces, you're just a little bit like, whoa. And then you sort of just settle into it and it's fine.
Yeah, exactly. Like anything, like any animation. I know, like the very first Star Wars Rebels episodes that we saw, a lot of people were like, oh, they look like, Lego people with hair that doesn't move. And they were all bent out of shape. Yeah. And then everyone loves it now. So it's fine.
Exactly. Well, shoot, man, look at those original episodes of the Clone Wars, like the first 2 seasons.
Oh, yeah, the women's bodies are just awful. Like, pointy. All right. Well, okay, so let's talk about the ending, because in the original Snow White, you end with this kiss. Snow White wakes up, and off the prince and Snow White walk toward a castle in the clouds, and they live happily ever after. Well, no, this movie kept going for another 20 minutes or so? And Snow White then returns to the kingdom, which oh my gosh, a magical moment where she walks through the village and the villagers who are all downtrodden and everything's gray around them, they start perking up and following her. And that gets me every time. Whenever like a swelling of people follow like one person, kind of like Newsies, you carrying the banner and everyone at the end in Newsies comes walking down the streets of New York. That just gets me. So they all, go ahead.
And they were reprising the original, the opening number,
yeah,
right?
they were.
Right.
Yeah. Talking about
where the good things grow.
Good things grow. Yeah. Which is basically all about you nurture the earth, nurture the people around you, nurture everything, and everyone will grow together.
Yep.
Yeah. So I loved that. And she returns to confront the queen. And okay, this is where I felt like this really paralleled the new Aladdin film, because in order to, which I had just watched 2 days before I watched Snow White. So when Snow White is basically breaking the evil queen's henchmen out of their spell by saying their names, and we used to pick apples together in the orchard, we used to do this, we used to plant seeds together, and calls them by name, I was thinking in my head, oh, well, this is a lot like Jasmine when Jafar is trying to take over all the guards and saying that he's the Sultan, and she goes, and she's like telling Hakim, oh, Hakim, I know your name. I knew you since you were a kid. So it was like the exact same speech.
Yep.
But I loved it. I mean, they're in the similar situations, right? They're daughters of the king, the leader of their people, and have decided to take ownership of that. So it worked for me, even though it was a repeat.
Yeah, if you watch enough of these, like there's so many similar beats in those original animated movies that they're going to repeat stuff in a way. And that's part of the problem of trying to adapt something that was originally, had one intention, and now you're trying to modernize it and make it be something else.
I also thought this was very much like Cinderella, the new Cinderella film, where her mom gives her the 2 values of be kind, have courage, and be kind.
Be kind.
Yep, those are the 2 values. And so this, you have your fearless, brave, true, fair. There you go. Yeah. But different values, but similar message there. Yeah.
Yeah. And for that kind of final scene, I'm going to go back to the original trilogy because this goes back to this idea of having a conquering hero versus a nurturing hero, which I've talked a lot about in Fangirl Blog over the years on a hyperspace series, and is that, they're in myth. It's a lot about the hero conquering, defeating something. And in this instance, which is very similar to Luke in Return of the Jedi, right? He doesn't conquer Darth Vader. He nurtures him back to the good side by saying, I'm not gonna play by your rules. I'm not gonna strike you down. I'm not gonna strike the Emperor down. I'm gonna be a Jedi. I'm gonna do what I'm supposed to do. And that triggers something in Darth Vader to remember who he was, right? It's the exact same thing that she does, right? Remember who you are. I know you. I know you're a good person. I know you that you don't want to be a soldier, that you want to be a farmer. And it's the same concept that's happening. So I loved it because I was like, what's going to happen in this movie now? And, so to me, it was a great change. I didn't realize that Mark Platt, who did Wicked, who, has done Wicked, tried to make it a movie 25 years ago and has finally produced Wicked, is a producer on this movie.
Oh, nice.
So, yeah. And he also did Into the Woods for Disney.
There you
go. The movie. So that's where you're seeing a lot of these similarities and tie-ins, right? That is very similar, and not surprised that the guys from The Greatest Showman are writing songs on this, because they're all doing things right now together. But yeah, this is very much this idea of a nurturing hero, which it's not a conquest. She just is asking the people on the other side to realize their true self and make a different decision.
Yes. And I gotta say, I loved, so I'm just going to bring up this one moment that I'm remembering now, but in the very beginning when she's a little girl, she has this flowered headdress and she gives it to another girl in the village. And then later when she returns, Snow White returns 10 years later or however many years later, the little girl has grown up just like Snow White and has the dried flowered headdress. And she shows it to her and she's the first one who follows Snow White in that swell of villagers who follow her to confront the queen. I thought that was a neat moment as well.
And she was the first person to sing, right?
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah.
It was they did a lot of things really well in this film. I really want to watch it again. And the soundtrack is really fun as well. Now,
I've listened to all the songs again.
Same. So another thing they retconned was the Snow White name, because Snow White kind of evoked fair in the way that the archaic word did, which was, oh, she's fair, she's Snow White, she's beautiful, And this, they call her Snow White because as a baby she was born in a snowstorm. And I thought that was a nice way to, retcon that name, basically.
Yeah, I mean, the kind of the idea it evokes is like, Snow White in the 1937 version is like, Snow White, like pure as the driven snow, virgin, untouched, right?
Yeah.
And by just giving her that name, it just changes sort of like the intention behind it.
Yeah, I like that.
Do you want to talk about the music and the choreography?
So yes, I do want to talk about the music, and I have to reference here. I'm holding, I believe this is like a Disney Chase Visa mailer. And they interviewed, I know, right? And it is very random. They interviewed here Jeff Morrow, who is the composer of the score of the film. So he didn't do the music that they sing, but he did the score, the underlying score. And so he was asked, how did you update the music and yet stay true to its origins? So this is what he says. I researched how they produced the original music for Grumpy's pipe organ. Sound master Jimmy McDonald had people blowing into empty whiskey jugs and ocarinas, which is a small wind instrument. I asked the studio if they still had them, and they sent me photos. And director Mark Webb and I went into the studio and got to toot on those very same whiskey jugs for this score. Isn't that the coolest thing?
That is cool.
I was like, now I got to listen to it again and hear these whiskey jugs and the ocarinas. Oh my gosh. So I thought that was really cool.
It's amazing what you can learn in like a random interview. To talk to something and you'll get weird little insights.
That and the fact that he was the whistler for Dopey. So he's Dopey's whistle. Very cute. Which I admire because I can't whistle.
I can't either. So when he got it in 2 seconds, I was like, yeah, maybe it's either you figure out how to whistle or you don't. You like can't, you never will learn. So that's where I'm going with, because he picked it up really quickly.
Yeah. All right, and then I love, so Jonathan, who's played by Andrew Burnap, he and Snow White have a duet, A Hand Meets a Hand. And this was so interesting because his voice, usually you have that tenor voice that comes and he's the guy, or low male voice, but Jonathan has a much higher voice, and he's almost like he could sing alto as a guy. And so what I really liked was they used that in this song. And so when he's singing that duet with Rachel Ziegler, like sometimes he would be singing the higher part and she was singing the lower part in some of those harmonies. So I thought he had a beautiful voice, but just very different. What did you think?
I loved their singing together, because again, that's the musical, right? It gives you all of like their internal workings of them sort of finding chemistry in each other, which Snow White really doesn't have in the original version. It's just like your prince will come and he will kiss you and you will be happy. And in this one, you actually see some like chemistry,
yes,
from the two of them in the way that they sing. I mean, it doesn't surprise me that she could sing. She has a lot of range as a singer, so that she could do whatever, and that creates a different sound than people are used to, and I like that when you sort of challenge what's happening.
Yeah, I loved that. Now you had some choreography you wanted to bring up, Miss Dancer.
Well, this was done by Mandy Moore, which I didn't realize. Like, if you guys have watched that You Think You Can Dance, you're going to know Mandy Moore. She's been a choreographer on that show, I think, from the beginning, and she just keeps doing the hits. Some of the like Emmy nominated dances that have been on there. She's also the choreographer from The Greatest Showman, which is going to be a Disney on Broadway show now. So, and for you Swifties, she also choreographed the Eras Tour.
Oh my gosh. And she's constantly choreographing things on Dancing with the Stars. Yeah, she's constantly choreographing stuff on there too. So
yeah, I mean, she's one of the iconic choreographers of our time. So the numbers showed that too. They reflected that in what they were trying to do. And for me, my favorite of all the numbers was The Princess Problems, which didn't require a lot of like grand choreography, but just the way it has to play out with the playfulness of the two of them working through this chemistry. But to me, that was very much like an Into the Woods kind of vibe of a song, and they made that work.
It was kind of the patter song of the film, right? A little bit, yeah. Princess. As soon as they got into this song, I knew it would be like too cutesy for some people, but I thought it was so cute.
No, it's like it reminds me of Agony as well.
Yes.
From Into the Woods.
Oh.
Right. Or for us Pine Nuts.
Yes.
That only Chris Pine could do Agony on film, because he just plays up the whole like emo prince, my life is so horrible.
But I'm hot and I'm gonna show it off.
I put that song on just for a laugh when I need to get a pick me up. I'm like, I'm gonna turn on Agony right now.
Well, the first thing I did when I bought that film at home was fast forward right to that song. I was like, screw the rest of this movie. Let me see Chris Pine. All right.
Yeah. I
Wow.
love that movie.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's get into... I really want to talk about the costumes and character design a little bit, because I was blown away. I mean, these designers are given basically carte blanche to recreate iconic looks in real life, and I eat that stuff up for breakfast. So I thought the Evil Queen, her costume was so cool, whereas Snow White's costume has the rounded pillows on her shoulders and rounded edges everywhere. The Evil Queen has sharp everywhere. Her crown is even more sharp and angular and made up of all these shards of like crystals and things. Her nails were so pointy. They were reminding me of Elphaba nails, though, actually.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But even more pointy, and she had these hard diamonds on each of her fingers on the rings. And so, like, everything about her was sharp. And I love that they went just that wholehearted direction of sharp versus round. Worked out great. And was there... Well, I'll just talk about my favorite moment with her, because she was wearing... So Gal Gadot was wearing different outfits that evoked the Evil Queen, but there's the iconic outfit, right? The iconic outfit that you see the Evil Queen wear in the parks. It's the purple dress robe, and then she's got her black cape behind her with the big, like, thing framing her face. And so when she finally is in this dress in the film, she's on top of some stairs, and you see this flash of this deep purple underneath her black robe, and then the camera like cranes up above her, and the black robe is not just black, it's like made up of all these different peacock colors in diamond shapes, so you get that sharpness, and it just framed her whole body, and I like gasped in the theater. I was blown away. It was amazing.
Yeah, they definitely did all that work for that one little shot.
Yes, they did.
Well, I'm not complaining, because I mean, I hope someday we get to see that costume, like,
yeah,
in an
oh,
exhibit
like
somewhere.
D23. I'm
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Oh, I'd love
because
to see
they would
that.
have to like splay it out, because it's the whole effect of all of it.
Yeah, that
together.
train
Yeah.
was like super long, and oh, it was so great. It was awesome.
I did appreciate Gal Gadot just like going like super camp villain.
Yeah.
With her, like she just took it all the way. She's like, I'm going to do this. I'm just going to be really evil queen. And the person who usually plays the evil queen in the Disney parks, they like get permission to like go over the top sometimes. If you've ever done a meet with the evil queen, oh yeah, they're usually like delicious evil.
I always like interacting with like the stepsisters from Cinderella.
Oh yeah,
they
they're
have
goofy.
so much fun. They have,
yes.
Oh my god. Well, they can play off each other too, which is always fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the evil queen, you can meet her at the, what is it, the Artist Point. You know, she's always like funny. Like,
yes. Yeah, you know what? Come to
funny
think of
evil.
it, at Oogie Boogie Bash, she was in charge of a maze, but now there's a different evil character there now. In fact, I think Mother Gothel took her place. But the
that
evil,
would be a good one.
yeah, Mother Gothel's fun. But the Evil Queen, we've interacted with her a couple times in the treat trail, and so it was fun. But you kind of have to move by a little quickly, and can't do much. But she talks about apples and applesauce and apple things. And I was like, "Oh, should we stay away from the apples?" She's like, "No, have some apples." It's really great.
That's like one of the other like silly conceits of the Snow White movie, and it's just something that you have to like let it go, because why the heck would you take an apple from a strange lady and take a bite? Like,
yeah, it is really stupid.
But it's hard to get past it. I'm sure they thought about how to get past it, but it's just like a strange random thing. Like maybe she should have made her a pie, an evil apple pie or something. I don't know.
That would have been cool. And that was another beef I had with the film, because you know that's so iconic, the poison dripping over the apple into the shape of a skull, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like they didn't do that very well in this live action version. It was just a skull, and the poison didn't really drip in a different color, and I was a little disappointed with that. But Evil Queen's cape made up for it.
They spent all the budget on the cape.
Yes. Oh, and as a nod, speaking of costumes, as a nod to Snow White, or just everyone finding their true selves and purpose, everyone is wearing white at the end. The villagers, Snow White, like her outfit, everything is like in this white. And I thought it was a fun way to bring it back around.
All those farmers got really not practical for the day and put on some white.
That's right. Well, they were going to dance in the village and have some apple pie. Yeah. But even apple pie, I don't think I'd eat with white. Yeah. Okay. You bring up a good point, Tricia.
No, I'm fine with the like the whiteness of it, like just the, you know, the way the palette changes from where it's been kind of dreary. So it's just, I was thinking of it the moment. I'm like, oh, it's not really practical clothes for them any other day of the year except for this celebration. But hey, what the heck?
Take off your wet clothes and take off your headphones.
It's been a long decade for the people of Snow White's village.
That's right. All right, we talked about the dwarfs a little bit, but you had some notes here that seemed interesting.
Well, I do think one of the best moments in the movie is Dopey speaking as a way of like acknowledging his change and also acknowledging what Snow White wants to do. So to me, that was like one of the moments I think everybody in the theater sort of was like, you know, when he finally said, yeah, we'll be with you, or whatever, however he said that.
Right. That was sweet.
One of my favorite moments. But the dwarves as a whole, I mean, one of the things that they did change from the movie is that when Snow White cleans the house, Whistle While You Work, she cleans it with the animals and not with the dwarfs. Mm-hmm. And in this movie, she makes those boys pick up their mess and helps, but she's not doing it all.
Right.
So
she gives them jobs.
Yes, she shows them how to do stuff. And it was funny because I wasn't thinking about Whistle While You Work as it was going along. I was just noticing that like they were like work, 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 work. And they get home and they're essentially like ripping off their clothes and they're just like going up to bed. Like there's like no like we're gonna make food or dinner. We're just like
or take a shower.
Like, not taking a shower. There's no cleanliness. That cottage must have stunk, is what I'm saying. But, you know, there is a lot of talk right now in the current environment about the distribution of just household work and how that is not evenly divided and how it isn't appreciated as a paid thing. Like, housewives are just at home and that work is just something that they should do. Or even women who work full-time jobs who have a male partner, they come home and still do a different load of work. So they do sort of address this in the movie by changing it from her cleaning up with the animals and having all the animals do that to engaging the dwarves in the process of picking up their own place. So I do appreciate that.
Yeah, I liked that too. The dwarves also, it should be noted, leave candles lit unattended in their cottage as well. I just noticed that.
But one of the things too that did you notice all the owls all over the dwarf's cottage?
Oh, like carved, right?
Carved.
Yes. Yeah.
Everywhere. Well, apparently that's a nod to the original movie, and like I don't remember it in that way, but there's like an obsessive amount of owls in the detail of their cottage in the original movie, and they transcribed it there. We talk about the convor a lot, talking about Star Wars, and the owl can denote the idea of wisdom or protection or transformation. I don't know. I've never seen anything. I went and looked around to see if there was anything particular that the animators are trying to do with the owls, but it just like you could see them everywhere. Like as you were looking, like they're in the carvings on the table, they're in the background, they're in the clock, and just birds in general are pretty strongly represented because Snow White has her little birds, and then they have the vulture for the queen, which
right.
It's not a good look if you're hanging around with the vultures, but
no,
it was cool to kind of see that another nod to the original movie.
Yeah, that's really, I'll have to look at the original movie again, but I did really like the design of the dwarves' cottage here in the new film, and I did remember how they had a lot of that like Tyrolean carvings because Snow White is originally a German fairy tale, and so that really evokes the Black Forest, Schwarzwald of southern Germany and Austria and all the carvings and stuff. Although I really felt like Geppetto had a hand in some of those carvings.
Well, there were a lot of Geppettos. Probably there was a lot of carvings.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we talked about it again, but the animals, I thought the designs were so cute. I loved how they weren't photorealistic animals. I loved how they had the rounded eyes and faces. And the moment right after Snow White comes out of the woods and she's still very scared and the trees have all grabbed her, and then she sees this dark place and green eyes are coming out at her, and it turns out to be a deer. And like the four of us in the theater were like, oh, we gasped when it turned into the deer.
I was expecting like a wolf or something.
Absolutely.
And it was like,
a
oh,
wolf.
it's a cute little deer.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, we had a baby deer born at the barn. We have wild deer running all around the neighborhood, and the mama deer decided to have her baby in the barn, and she kept leaving it in one of the horse paddocks and then going off to do her mama deer stuff and then coming back. And we finally convinced her to take baby deer off the property because we were limited on a paddock for the horses. But
yeah, like, please take her away. It's like, oh, but this is nice shelter. I
know. It was like Bambi, but not as sad because it still had its mom.
Yeah. Okay, good.
I have one last question to kind of close out this conversation.
Okay.
Do you think that Snow White, in that moment at the end where she, she's like, yeah, I'm not going to kill you, Queen. I know that you want me to do that, but I'm choosing not to. Do you think that she would have fought if she had to, if it hadn't have worked?
So I feel like possibly yes, because so in this moment, Snow White has made a connection with her villagers. She's walked them up to the castle. And now the evil queen is confronting her. And if Snow White kills the evil queen in front of all these villagers, basically that would have changed her character to them. Then she would no longer be Snow White. And I think she knew that. So, I feel like at this point she's been displaying bravery. She's displayed her fearlessness by returning to the queen. And if it was a matter of self-defense, she probably could have at least maybe not kill her, but wound her. So I could see that happening. What about you?
Well, I mean, she went there with the backup plan. She had the Jonathan's merry band of thieves, and they're getting weapons, and the dwarves kind of circle around the back. So I don't think she went in there like blindly thinking she could change.
No.
She could win. In part, I think she was stalling to allow them to, the queen was distracted and she was doing her part. I don't know that she would pick up a weapon, but
okay.
I don't think she went in there thinking like naively that she would win without having other people come who were, sometimes you have to work with people who would do things that you wouldn't necessarily do.
Yeah.
But they could do it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's part of, aligning yourself with people who might have strengths that you don't, or will do things that you can't.
That confrontation, Snow White and the Queen, is reminding me a lot now of Return of the Jedi and Luke. And specifically, like, when the Emperor's goading Luke on, look at all your pitiful little band out here. They're going to be crushed by me, and doesn't that make you mad? You want this. And he's like, the lightsaber. And so finally when Luke picks up the lightsaber, like, that's a moment where Luke takes the bait. He takes that lightsaber, he takes the dagger, and eventually has to throw it away. So Snow White didn't even get to that point. But she might have been goaded into it.
I know.
Wow, fun parallels. I like
fun parallels. I promised you people we would get to it eventually.
We did. No, we talked about Star Wars a lot in this. I like that. Wow.
The things that align. George Lucas was pretty smart.
Mm-hmm.
Back in his day.
Very smart. I love it.
He's not perfect storyteller. There's things he could have done better, but I think he was trying to show us something with Luke's journey.
Yeah.
And where he eventually ended up. And like the point too is like the whole Return of the Jedi doesn't work if Han and Leia don't succeed as well, right?
Right.
Just defeating Darth Vader is one step, or changing his mind, and ending Palpatine's life is one step, but you have to still take out the Death Star, because there's always another emperor ready to step up into the position of might. So, you want to finish this up with some plugs?
I do, yes. Okay, so I want to say that Richard and I spoke with Maria Sandoval, who is the head hair designer in the Mandoverse, so the TV shows and the movie coming out next year. She helped design the hair or bring designs to life on people's heads, like Fennec Shand. So that's on episode 307 of Skywalking Through Neverland. And we also learned when talking to her that when the Galactic Star Cruiser was a thing, she would design hair pieces for people, like custom made hair pieces, and she still does that. So I've reached out to her. She sends you this whole questionnaire that you can fill out, and about your character, about what you want, and she'll design a piece for you. So
cool.
I'm going to get a hair piece designed by the head hair designer on the Mandoverse.
Love it.
I'm excited. And then also, over the past weekend, my friends, the Coven and I, we went to Paley Fest, the Agatha All Along panel. And what they do at Paley Fest is they play some TV show, like they did this for Andor, that they play part of the show and then the creators come out and talk about it. So at this particular panel, Agatha All Along, we watched the 3rd episode, and then Jack Schaefer, the showrunner, as well as Catherine Hahn, Ollie Ahn, Sashir Zamata, and Deborah Jo Rupp all came out, and they had an hour-long panel moderated by Ash Crossan. It was really awesome. I took some video that we'll be sharing in Reels on our social media, and I had a moment. I had a fangirl moment. I thought of you, Tricia. I thought of our podcast. But like, I'm sitting there and watching these 6 women on stage, just so into their craft, so on top of what they were doing. And I like started to tear up. I'm like, look at all these 6 women. Like, oh, so it was amazing. I just want to point that out. And then there was a really cool moment because Jack Schaefer was asked, what is your favorite fan theory? Or all of them were asked that. And so Sashir jumps right in and said, like, oh, well, I really liked this theory that you guys were having that Rio is Nikki's mom. And before she could get out the word mom, there was like this huge swell of applause in the audience that was mostly women. So high cheers. And basically Nicholas Scratch is Agatha's child who died at 5 or 6, but everyone was, well, not everyone, but a lot of the male creators and everything were like, well, who's the father? Who's the father? And we have always said in our podcast, well, they're witches, like they could do whatever. But Jack Schaefer did confirm at the panel that Rio is Nikki's other mom. So there you go. And everyone was all excited.
I mean, I felt like that was something that they didn't necessarily have a way to address, but I felt like they were sort of telling us that, like, Nikki wasn't leaving he was Agatha. Going with his other mom, right? He wasn't just leaving Agatha. He was going with his other mom when he walked away. And I felt like that was there. It's nice to see it sort of, that's what we intended. Yeah. And reminds me when they went through all the goofy kind of ways they were trying to justify that the Dathomiri males were on
a different planet.
Yeah.
The other side of the planet.
Yeah, and why they were Zabrix, and I was like, it's like they're witches. Like, you don't need to jump through all these hoops. And I actually put that in my dark side book. They're like, well, how do you know? And I'm like, they're witches. They can do whatever they want. That's like the conceit of being a witch. Just like the conceit of being a Jedi is if you want to jump 80 feet in the air, you can. It's just
or lift some rocks.
Exactly. It's just a silly, goofy conceit, right? In Jurassic Park, like the dinosaurs aren't supposed to be able to reproduce, but they do. Nature finds a way. So, yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
I'm going to plug Hyperspace Series. We actually went off the storytelling tangent and did a detailed breakdown of the Kathleen Kennedy news kind of revelation of that she will retire at some point, which isn't shocking. But it's an interesting discussion about how like mainstream media is at this like different point, inflection point of who they'll be, and how like the big trades responded versus how Puck News, which is a rising star in that kind of sphere of news, how there was kind of this like aggression between the different outlets, and then just like what she said, and for all that the Deadline article says that she isn't retiring, she says in the article she essentially confirms the news that was broken by Puck News and then confirmed shortly afterward by the Hollywood Reporter. So at some point in the next year, it seems like Kathleen Kennedy will retire. We talked about it. Sometimes you have to talk about media literacy. It's an important thing, and that's essentially what that episode is. So if you want to go to Fangirl Blog, Hyperspace Theories, you can check that out. And if you want to check out Sarah's stuff, skywalkingthroughneverland.com. And I guess we'll just transition to, if you want to listen to our other podcast, fangirlsgrowingrogue.com.
Absolutely. And yes, you can also find us on all social media, including Blue Sky. We are at FG Going Rogue. And Tricia, you are at Fangirl Cantina. And I am at Jedi Tink.
You can send us an email, contact at fangirlsgoingrogue.com.
And then you can also find us on Facebook. Just search Fangirls Going Rogue, and you can like the page or join the group. But please answer the questions that pop up, or we can't let you in.
And please go to Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts and leave a positive 5-star review. We need your reviews so more people can find us.
So until next time, yup,
Yup. Yup.
This site is not affiliated in any way with Lucasfilm Limited, LLC, the Walt Disney Company, or any of their affiliates or subsidiaries.
Yep.